Good morning and welcome to 30 Days of Transformation, Building Better Mental Health, Resilience, and Authentic Thriving. Thanks for being here. Today's day 6. I'm sorry I'm a little late today. It's 9:30 and I like to do this, between something like 8:30 and 9, but today I got a little derailed because I'm having my basement remodeled, and so the workmen were here, and so if there's any noise, that's what's going on. So today I'm going to continue this discussion about Samkalpa being this positive intention setting. When I learned the word Samkalpa from my Indian teachers, they said firm determination. You take firm determination. So, if that works for you, that's fine. But for me, that's a little too intense, I feel like. And so I like this positive intention kind of idea. So it doesn't feel as much of a sort of like a burden or a duty, but more something that I'm doing to sort of cultivate this, to cultivate positive habits in myself and to help shift things that I need to move away from. So today I wanted to break down, yesterday I talked about the self-compassion and ahimsa and how that is relevant to Samkalpa. And then today I want to talk about building or cultivating positive habits. Now, it's important to understand that what scientists say is between 80 and some people say 95% of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior are floating below the level of consciousness. They tend to be intrinsic, subconscious patterns, which means they're quite difficult to shift, and the whole process of yoga is a process of becoming aware of these patterns, starting to become aware of the way that we behave, and then using that awareness to leverage change in our lives. And that's difficult. It's difficult to become aware of our patterns. I just to tell you a story about that for myself. Yesterday I came home from a workshop. It was like around 3:00, and I came home and I was like, honey, where's lunch? And he was like, well, you didn't ask me to make lunch for you. And I was kind of grumpy about it. I made myself a sandwich. I sat down, and then he said, and my husband came up and he said, he's from New Zealand. So he was like, sometimes you're like a bloke. You come in, you go, where's my meal? And, we were just laughing about it. And he was like, all I had to do was send me a text. I would have made you some lunch. So the point being here that, that's one of my habits, and of not, just assuming I would come home and have something to eat. So we all have those kinds of habits. And the thing is, if you don't know what those annoying habits are, what your idiosyncratic behavior is, you should ask the person that you live with, because they're the ones who can explain it to you if you don't know what it is. So that's a habit or a behavior that I need to shift out of, and it's so below the level of consciousness and kind of deep that I don't even realize I do it. So having somebody to mirror it back to you and compassionately point out the behavior is it's essential, and it doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be a friend. It could be somebody that a roommate. But to have that kind of relationship is really important, because it's through relationship that we are able to make these changes. It's through that kind of interaction that we're able to make changes. So my ideas today for what are those? Okay, before I go to that, one other thing I want to say is the other thing that research shows, right? So most of our behavior is habitual. Most of our thoughts, most of our feelings are habitual. But the other thing that research shows is that if you start to become aware that you want to shift something and you want to cultivate different habits, that it's much easier to add new habits than it is to get rid of old habits, right? So it's easier to bring positive things in. And because we only have so much space in our life, what tends to happen is the negative things tend to fall away. Because I don't want to say negative things, but the things that are not as life-affirming tend to fall away. Because you want to, as you're cultivating positive habits, then things start to shift, because you realize, I have to make that change in order to continue with this positive habit. And I've told this story before, I think in the series, that, when I first started learning to meditate, my meditation teacher said, here's the meditation practice. And then as an aside, she said, and you might want to, not drink so much alcohol. And I was young, and you might want to cut down on or eliminate meat from your diet. So both of those things. Well, I've pretty much been a vegetarian most of my life, but the drinking alcohol, I was still engaged in that. And by the way, this doesn't mean you have to be a vegetarian. And I don't. I think everybody has to come. That the food conversation could take hours and hours, and it's so individual. So that's not, that this is just an example of what was going on in my life. So I remember being like, I don't want to do that. That's not part of who I am, But as I started meditating more and more, she said to me, just meditate and don't worry about the rest of it. It'll shift when that time is right, So I started to do my practice. This was more than 25 years ago. And then I noticed I don't really want to stay out as late partying because it's difficult to get up and meditate the next morning, and meditation is important to me. So the idea of cultivating positive habits more is, you want to bring these things in that are life affirming for you, whatever they are, and then the other things can start to fall away. So I've got 3 suggestions. I only have 3 bullet points. So I have 3 suggestions for today. And one of them is start with chanting. Like if you're not, and it might not be right for you, but for some people, starting with chanting is much easier than starting with pranayama or meditation. And that could be just putting on some chants that you like. It's some kind of, tons of things available on YouTube or iTunes. And so adding the positive practices like chanting to your daily routine can start to shift things, right? So it might just be listening in the morning. Like my husband likes to come down in the morning as we're getting ready, and I'm like getting school stuff ready. My cat's trying to get up on me. Come here. As we're starting to get school stuff ready. Oh, there you are. We're starting to get ready for the day. My husband loves to put different chants on. And so we listen to that as a way of just kind of enjoying being together and sort of a way of waking up in the morning. And we also do it at night. I get my guitar out and we like to chant together as a family at night. So chanting is something that's really easy, and like kids can do it. So those of you who have young kids and you're trying to find ways to do nice things together as a family, or you're trying to find ways to share with your kids, because sometimes like meditation, kids feel really isolated. That's something I can talk about later, but kids can feel like, oh, mom's closing the door, So how do you bring them into the practice? And that's something that we've really tried to cultivate in our family. And we do that with chanting because kids love chanting, So that's one bullet point. And then the next one would be pranayama. And I'm going to suggest a very simple ratio, like 6 counts in and 6 counts out. Pranayama does not have to be complicated. It does not have to be, fancy. But it does have to be consistent and regular. So even just 5 minutes a day of just getting that smooth, even breath, might be 8 in, 8 out. For some people I've worked with, it's 3, so you have to find the right ratio for you. And then my last suggestion, of course, is meditation. If you're not meditating regularly, that's something that I teach over 10 months during my 200-hour program. I also teach it in the 300-hour program, but it's also something that I'm happy to offer tips on here. And, the traditional meditation from India, from the yoga tradition, is mantra-based. So using those simple mantras like Shiva Hung, or you could use the word Shanti if you'd like, or an English word that resonates for you, or something in Hebrew or Greek or Latin. Those kinds of short words with very deep packed meaning, like I am that cosmic consciousness. There's no more powerful intention than that. So talking about Samkalpa mantra is a way to help us sort of create an umbrella over all our Samkalpas. And that umbrella is, I am this consciousness, I am consciousness. I am nothing but that, and all of the other stuff in my life that can take a break for right now while I focus on this, because focusing on this is a way to help elevate ourselves to our higher potential. So I hope this has been useful for you. What I would like to ask you to leave today as a comment, and I got to add it in there, is just one practice that you've cultivated, like one habit. And it might not be chanting, pranayama, or meditation. It might not be in the yoga realm. It might be something else. It might be some asana that you really like to share. Just share one, because as we share as a community, we give each other ideas and we support each other. So thank you so much for being here today. Tomorrow I'm going to break down Samkalpa a little further, and we'll continue from here. Appreciate your comments and your feedback. So thanks for being here. Namaste.